Welcome, everybody. I am Pato, and today we're here to talk about the weakest Guild Ball players. Last episode, if you will, we talked about what makes a powerful player. My assertion was, hey, it's like X Factor abilities, it's displacement abilities, it's either control of barrel lob from stave and displacement from that. It's Gutter's amazing stats combined with a displacement effect with their chain grab. It's silence is just control ability with easy access to momentum. And his tucked in shutout, and just good stats along with him as well. It's average increase ability to give you an extra action. Those are the kind of things that made a powerful Guild Ball player in my mind. A lot of you said that it was strikers and their ability to score lots of points and be efficient with it and that kind of stuff, which is a good reasoning as well. When it came to the weakest player, I opened up the poll and I was very interested in what do players view as weakest. And now, as a disclaimer, we didn't get like 1,000 people to do this. It was only like 30 results, which is not a very indicative of the mass population, but it was good enough to get the conversation started. And I don't think that the information or what players felt was completely inaccurate, especially in the cases of the top ones, which were fairly consistent, as we'll get into. And you can see up there on the graph. And I think that one thing that is another disclaimer is I think that Steamforge has done a really good job balancing this game, because they have 100 plus so models and maybe only 1, 2, or 3 have actually some really valid stuff behind them. Spoilers. But that's pretty good. Out of like 100 plus models, like 2 or 3, you've kind of like, but like everybody had a really hard time after the first 2 models that jumped off their brain picking a third one. And a lot of the comments kind of were like, well, it's really hard. Some people like copped out and picked mascots, like that kind of thing. So I don't think it's necessarily indicative of, that the models are, like terrible. I think it's just like varying degrees of playability. And when I look at what makes a weak player and what is egregious in my mind, or if it, is potentially a failed state of a player, is if they're not fun enough to play. They're thematic, and Steamforge has done a really good job of making the character that character on the pitch. If that has kind of failed, like their unique thing is not unique enough or doesn't come out correctly, that's a failure. Or if they're just like stats are just terrible, that kind of stuff. But there's very few models that fit into that. They have some kind of trade-off usually. So as you can see from the results up there, 80% of players said Harry the Hat, 56% said Harmony, Callus, Meat Hook, and Tower, which are ones we'll dive into. We're in like the 20% range, if you will. And, we had Stoker, Stave, Boar, and kind of even, Avarice and Greed and Stave that were models that I put in my power tier. People had reasons, unreliability, easy to generate momentum off of, Greed's liability, that kind of stuff, where they kind of were like, there's like there's reasons I kind of shy away from these guys and actually think they're pretty weak, and people may think they're strong. As the top 3 weakest, I don't think those guys make it in for me because they do have these really good X factors, but again, to each their own. That's the kind of fun of to see what are your guys' opinions of what makes a weak model. So let's drop this. Let's dive into what are the themes that came out of this. Like, what is the themes of a lot of the models that showed up on the weak list? Well, 1 influence generation was very common, which makes sense. You want more action points to do more plays. 1-inch reach, which, it's not as deficient as 2-inch reach, but there's a lot of people that have 1-inch reach, but it is a very common thing of a weak model. Like 2-inch reach models very rarely made the list. Big guys are vulnerable. Makes complete sense. You generate a lot of momentum off of them, so they were a common theme, and that's a very common theme of why a different player chose one of these models. Scything Blow, and side note, Midas is like one of 8 or 16 captains that we have, 16 plus captains, and he's so game warping that people are like, this model's weak because they're going to take Scything Blow and 1-hit momentous Scything Blow my team to death. That's kind of scary to think about, that the model's like not playable because it has Scything Blow. Like Scything Blow is like the scarlet letter on a model, which is interesting in its own right. And then abilities that affect terrain, because they kind of feel like throwaway abilities. Like, yeah, you wrote it on there. Stoker and Tower are the main kind of guys for this. Burn the floor and stand your ground, that kind of stuff. Where it's like, because of tournament rules, the terrain's either small or there's not a lot of scenarios we're going to get use out of it. But let's dive in let's dive in these models. Let's go in reverse order. So of the top 5 at least. So Tower actually, when I look at him, his thematic and theme, if you will, is that he's a defensive Mason player. He has Defend the Ground, which again not super usable, but he has Shutout, which is usable and good. He has decent all-rounder Mason stats. He has knockback, floored, which are actually pretty good. If a knockdown model, if he's a perfect knockdown model, he has a 7 tack 5 long playbook model with 3 damage KD on 5, which is pretty good. Then you have heroic play, which actually combined with hammer makes him like an effective bodyguard for hammer or other models. Yes, it's a close range of 2 inches and it can be affected, but overall there is a thematic there where like, yeah, like that's actually could be really strong. Attaching to hammer, who's an MVP style captain and has tough hide and that kind of stuff, will make him really hard to actually just remove him or dislodge him as a threat, so much that they might just turn straight to tower, who has 18 hit points, which is actually pretty good. And I think the main problem with him is season 1 bias, and the fact that, you know, with honor he wasn't actually that great. He was competing with space with mallet. Start of season 2, Chisel's just a more sexy option, even if she is a liability herself, in my opinion. But she has the 2-inch reach and those other kind of things. Where Tower just kind of fell off the list a little bit. But I think within season 2, especially with Hammer, there's a pretty good argument that Tower fulfills his power fantasy and thematic, and his stats are actually pretty decent. There's not a lot of argument for me to actually tweak or change anything with his character. And I actually think Tower's a decent model. And I agree that some people might think he's on the weaker side, but I don't think he's actually the most egregious of a lot of even some of the other players on the list that might have been lower than him. So yeah, let's move along to Meat Hook, my main girl. So I actually really, Meat Hook was one of the models I championed and really liked the thematic of lore, the look of the model, that kind of stuff. I could see why people thought or think she is weak. She only has 1-inch melee zone, but she only has the 1 influence. But if you look at her other stats, she basically has Shank stats, except for she's a better kicker, which I would trade. Obviously, want the influence over kick stats. And the 2-inch reach is amazing. And she doesn't have the mobility, but she has a decent playbook. She has Scything Blow, which again, Scarlet Letter, Tooled Up, which you can take Rage for, and Rage is more influence efficient, so that wasn't really great. In the season 1, Ox was already generating you +1 damage or +2 damage with his legendary play in armor piercing, so having Tooled Up on a character wasn't that great. In a Fillet team, actually pretty decent. Smell Blood, you have the +2 movement on the charge, plus you have the +1 damage. So that's actually pretty cool with bleed targets. She Crucial Artery, so generates her own bleed. And Sanguine Pool, last but not least, where, yes, models that she hits with the -4 remove will more likely be able to get to her, but she does stop them from getting out and away from the scrum, which is kind of where you want people as a butcher player. And then she does 1 damage on top of it. Overall, I think that she actually fits her thematic really well, even if I think she is a little bit more on the weak side because she's not influence efficient. But I put her in the same boat as Graves, who I actually love now and have been playing into specific matchups and is actually very playable at a tournament level, even though he's considered weak. And even when I came in, people were like, it's garbage, you can't take him. But then lo and behold, Graves, into Fish, into Masons and other stuff was actually some pretty good tech and playable. Play Graves 2016, hashtag, yeah. And so Meat Hook, I would argue, in a Fillet team, you have to be careful with Crucial Artery players, because if you have too many, then they kind of cancel out Crucial Artery because everybody's just bleeding all the time and Fillet sustains it. But having another model that can generate and proc Scything Blow even on a large scale with Scything Blow, actually pretty good. And I would say that she is playable in that power fantasy, even for fun, that kind of stuff. So I think that while I can agree, I can see the influence efficiency side of it and the liability of Midas. I also think that she's playable, and I could see playing her pretty well. So I think that she doesn't actually need any big tweaks. I don't think she warrants a tweak. A lot of people like to give everybody 2/4 influence, but I think that it's interesting to have the trade-off of a 1/4 influence model, and I think it dulls down the game if there's too many models that are just everybody's 2/4, right? So let's talk about the next one, which is Catalyst. So Catalyst is interesting to me in the fact that he is actually a good poster child for what I was afraid of with season 2 veteran players. And if we look at him right away, he's a 1-inch big guy, but he's a little bit faster and has the little bit higher defensive stats instead of the 2-0s, 2-2s, that kind of stuff. And he does have 2 influence, although he can only have 3 max. Intensify, Momentous 2-on-2, has an early tackle, which is pretty cool. His knockdown's a little far into the playbook, which I don't like as much. And he also is kind of built to be an attacking guy, and has this really cool thematic with Elemental Infusion. Problem is, Alchemists in season 1 especially didn't play to this theme. And again, you're going to hear me bring up season 1 a lot, because I think and the important part about that is that season 1 thematic actually I feel like a lot of the content and stuff that was created early for the knowledge base of Guild Ball was from season 1 perspective, and it's kind of carried its way over into season 2, even though it's kind of outdated and validated thoughts. And it's very easy to, like, what am I looking for, a think tank, or like, basically basically the whole community is basically going to be like, well, I read once that Graves is bad for this and this reason, I'm just going to continue to think he's bad. Where again, I brought up an example where I think he's actually he's playable tournament competitively. And so I just want to bring that in that perspective, because you have to understand where the initial thought come from and how it's carried over, and whether it's now invalidated or not, which I think for Tower Mihawk has actually been invalidated. And so now that players that objectively were pretty weak are now playable and their thematic works. Where Catalyst is one where I feel like Element Infusion, again, season 1 failed because Midas doesn't play into the condition game, and some of the other players you would have to take were weaker, so you just didn't take them. Smoke now plays into that, so it's playable. I think the issue with him actually is that he is just not as good as his veteran self. So let's look at his veteran self. Veteran Catalyst, he's easier to hit, but who cares? 3-1, 2-1. Kicks, I didn't want him to kick anyways. 2-6 isn't much better. But he gets a 2-inch melee. He gets basically like, if you compare him to old Catalyst, he basically has the poison proc already on them. So he has 8 attack, same speed. Playbook's pretty cool. Has Intensify combined with momentous damage. Has early pushes, knockdown still on 4. I like a lot of this stuff. And then still has Intensify, 20 more hit points. This is the part that's the kicker. He's more influence efficient because he has Furious, which is just better. And even having the 1 extra influence isn't that much better, especially on a model that already has built-in bonuses. Chemical Frenzy is just a way more efficient of Chemical Infusion, because I really just wanted the +1 damage anyways, but I didn't want to take Mercury. But now, like, any condition gives me +1 damage, including like knockdown. That's a condition. And then you have Deteriorating, which is a downside, but then you also have the bonus of being able to get a 4 VP and finish the game and win. And yes, it is important to note that you cannot heal. You'll take the 4 damage after the turn, but I mean, he has a lot of hit points, and like if they really want to go for him, they go for him. But overall, I think he's actually not too bad. He's just a better version, again, because of the reach and just the better stats and more reliable efficiency between Chemical Frenzy and Furious. So when I go back to Catalyst, I think he's actually worthy of a change. Now, what you change about him, like, I'm not necessarily sure. Like, maybe you make him a slightly better kicker, so that actually is an option because he's a little bit more sane. I think you actually play up the Elemental Infusion. I think one thing, because a lot of big guys are vulnerable, I think an interesting mechanic, again, playing into conditions, might be, what if he gains +1 defense from models that are targeting him that currently have conditions on them? So, for example, if my model has poison or fire or whatever on them and they're trying to attack Catalyst, he's now a 4-1 with 27 hit points. That seems good. That kind of puts him into a unique category of his own on top of all these other elemental infusion things. Now I start to go, okay, maybe he's playable. Maybe bump him so he's actually a 2-4 potentially, so you could actually do something more if you want. You could actually load him up to match the inefficiency or the extreme efficiency of Catalyst version 2. Do something to play off Elemental Fusion, because I think Elemental Fusion is a very cool idea. It's just like, in what world am I going to have all those conditions that are going to stick, and then he's going to come in and do the thing? Chemical Frenzy is just way more efficient, so why not make an efficiency kind of thing that saps momentum from your opponents and plays into this condition game and make him actually a big guy that's harder to hit? I think that's an interesting potential solution to a model that has kind of been outclassed by the veteran model and might need some love. And I think there needs to be significant love, because I think where a lot of veteran players, it's debatable which one is better, and they kind of fit certain niches a little bit better. The key to me is I feel like Catalyst 1 and Veteran Catalyst want to brawl. They both want to brawl, and one's just better at brawling. So there needs to be some sort of trade-off, and like either this one can actually play a little bit more kicking and passing game better, and maybe it's a little bit more defensive, where this one's just all offensive, no defensive. I think that would be the trade-off to me, and I don't think it's stark enough yet that original Catalyst is playable over his new version. So next up, we have one that was over 50, like almost like 56%, 57%. Said this one. It's Harmony, and Harmony is very interesting to me, and I disagree a little bit. And I think that the thematic of her and her sister is really strong and I like it a lot. And if you look at if you didn't look at the card, like if you disregard the abilities, and I told you you have a 10 hit point model, but it's a 6/8, 6 attack, 4/6 kick, defense 5, 1 armor, 2/4 influence, has scything blow, like you would be like, I'm interested. Like I actually think I would play that model. That stat line's amazing. Like 5/1 armor, like oh, that's really cool. Oh, and it's linked and can play back to back. Oh my gosh, tell me more, Pado. I think the issue though here is that although she, has those great stats, the problem with players is scything blow against Scarlet Letter. uh, and then you have a lot of predictability. Like she has to be in this really tight bubble with honor and brick to get all these kind of bonuses. Honor more so than brick to get the good stats, because without honor, like she can't really kick reliably with the 2/6 kick, although it's possible. I mean, Shank scores goals, and she can't really attack. With 3 attack, you basically get nowhere in her playbook. Scything blow isn't even possible as a threat. It's not even momentous. So I get really afraid, if honor goes down, if she gets separated by again, displacement kind of effects, she's very vulnerable. And that's kind of what players are scared of. They're afraid of the consistency of her and the liabilities that she has built into her kit. Me personally, I think that I really like the thematic of her. I think that it should be a risk reward type of thing. I think that there's a few things that I would maybe tweak about her. I do think she could use a tweak, either that 2/6 kick goes to 3/6 so that at least she can kick on her own, and that's an option. Although that takes away from the wow factor of her family honor ability, which I'm kind of actually more in favor of them giving a little bit more buff to family honor and actually having it being a thing where like maybe this is 6 inches, maybe like just give her a little bit more slack so that she doesn't have to be quite bunched up. I don't know if it's in the design docs for Masons that they have to all have 4 inches or less buff zones or whatever like that, so they're like synergy team. But I think giving her a little bit more, like, and I think of it like in terms of like gameplay or like lore wise, it's her being like 2 feet further from honor really going to affect her from being able to kick and attack as good. I don't know. I think giving her a little bit more slack, even bumping it to 6 inches, could do wonders for positioning her, keeping her safe, and then bringing her in and doing the double activations when you need to. And currently 4 inches just kind of makes her like very predictable and a liability, which players say. And I think they're a little bit justified in that, considering how strongly with the small voting there was that she kind of came up as a weaker model, and for some justified reasons. Again, I like the risk reward aspect. I love her theme. I think Linked is amazing. I think that like potential for her to like activate back to back with honor, kill Alpha Strike a model, go and score potentially is there, and I'm really excited by it. Again, it's just a little bit predictable, and maybe giving her a little bit more slack would, see her on the pitch more. Also, along with getting a new model, though, I imagine a lot of people are going to play Veteran Harmony's model in place of Harmony when you see her on the pitch, regardless from now on. So with that, let's move on. Let's move on to the one, the only, the actual egregious model that probably is the one most worrying of a change, and that is Harry the Hat. And with 80% of the people that came in voting on him, I'm guessing the other 20% probably forgot about him when they were voting, or just didn't have knowledge of him, because this guy is like he's an interesting test case for Steamforge, where I actually almost wonder when they were in the lab and they were building out season 2, because I think back to Union season 1, and they were very powerful. They had to do a bunch of nerfs across the board to their players, had to get rid of a lot of reach. And I think coming into season 2, they were like, we need to be, and again, I don't know this. This is just like in my head, I'm trying to think of reasons why Harry the Hat is the way he is. And I'm trying to think like, maybe they were very overly cautious in designing him. And they were like, we can't have another really powerful model, because you see like they only got one player, a veteran and a captain rolled into one, which I love Veteran Rage, by the way. I could talk about how much I love the model and the story and thematic of him. He's great for Union and even in play. And then, they had Strongbox, but they kind of like gave you 3 models, so they didn't really expand the roster, so they didn't have that advantage. And they just kind of didn't really want to have to release another model that they have to nerf and pull back on and make them too strong. Which is my guess. Again, I don't actually know what happened with him, but let's look at him. Brewer speed, not great. 4 attack, not good, although he is crazy. Kick 2-6, not reliable. 3-1 armor, not great stats. 1-4, not good. 1 inch reach, not great. 1 influence abilities, so they're not reliable. 19 hit points, that's actually pretty good. Crazy, again, this also affects your playbook, so it's kind of give and take, and you basically have to think of it as I'm going to lose one of my momentous plays because of because I'm going to want to heal afterwards. Rising Anger is going to generate you momentum, which is a cool ability. I do like that ability, although his counterattack playbook isn't so great, which we'll get to in a second because he has no knockdowns, although he does have 2-inch push. And then Inspiring Hat, which is kind of supposed to be his signature play. The problem with, and if you think about it, it's actually pretty good. You spend momentum, everybody within essentially that 7-inch bubble that he creates now basically gets bonus times for all their attacks, which is actually pretty good. The only problem with that is you look at Strongbox and it's Shelling Out, which is the same thing but a 4-inch aura on a bigger base, so it's a bigger zone, and you get +1 attack and +1 momentum point for knocking out a player and killing them, and it doesn't take any momentum to generate this. Now, yes, he's slow. Yes, he's a mascot. You're probably not going to ever take him over coin, but the point still stands. The signature ability of a model that already has no other redeeming qualities is not unique. It's not great, even, and it's within his own faction. It's not even different factions and somewhere he can't play for, so you're getting something that you don't have access to. It's like, I don't know. So then we carry over to what I think is just like the thing that pokes me in the eye is this playbook. Like it's one row. It's not imaginative. There's no utility. I have to go 4 in to get 2 unmomentous damage. Yes, he has a tackle early, but he has no knockdown. I have to go 5 in to get momentous damage, and yes, a 2-inch push momentous is cool, but there's other characters where I can easily get that on 2 or less, and it's an option of between damage and that even at that point, and I'm just like really struggling with this playbook. And part of it is because its ugliness comes from the fact that he's crazy, so they have to account for the fact that he's going to be a 7. They assume you're always going crazy with all these hit points, which is cool. And he's going to be a 7 attack model, and if you buff him with the aura, then he's going to be a 8 attack model, but he now has a 7 long playbook, so it's not even that great, and the playbook's not great. And so like, what am I playing him for? It's not his playbook, it's not his stats, it's not his reach, it's not his ability plays, and Inspiring Hat's the only thing, but I can get a better version of that somewhere else within the same faction. So I'm not a huge fan. And I think that the reason this guy keeps coming up is because other players are struggling to find out, besides his model being cool, when am I going to play this guy? So how would I actually approach fixing Harry the Hat? I think there's so many things that are just weak about him throughout that I think that he doesn't... I struggle to say he needs a full overhaul, but I think he needs one thing that I think, at least to make him fun and thematic. Because when I go to solve models like this too, one thing that Steamforge does really, really well is the model that's in the fluff and lore that you see on the page translates to the pitch, and you're like, yes, like that's that model. That's cool. So I went to Harry the Hat's lore and I read it, and for season 2, and I was like, this is actually pretty cool lore. It's kind of like this red hood kind of thing from the DC comic, where this like hat passes along to all these different players that were remarkable. And then, it's going and it's explaining all the players, and it goes like, and then it gets to Harry the Hat, and it's just like, there's a guy, and now he has the hat. And you're just like, what? Like, is that like they translated it is he's a throwaway? Like there's like nothing the brewer's guy was the pinnacle brewer, the engineer was the pinnacle engineer, created this engine that was so good they threw him out. A butcher that was like a real sadistic madman that was like taking people out, like an alchemist that was all about might have been smoke, who knows, but like was all into like throwing all these smoke canisters and got killed by boar, like all these kind of things. And then you get to Harry the Hat, and there's like, he's the guy with the hat now, and you're like, all right, tell me more. I guess there's no more. So I think that the hat is the theme, right? And so when I think of like what really is good, because like the playbook's mostly weak. The abilities are mostly weak. Inspiring Hat, it's actually decent, but I think that not giving him reach, giving more influence, I don't think is the right way to go. I think the rest of his playbook, rest of his stats and everything is weak enough, so he needs something that's like thematic to him, works. And my fun outside the box idea, I know this is going to sound crazy, Actually might sound a little crazy. Ditch crazy. Give him like 5 attack, maybe 5 or 6 attack. Give him a 5 long playbook and fix this eyesore. And what I say you do, make it 5 long, 3 columns. And you're like, Pado, first off, do we have the technology? Yes, we have the technology. Rest assured, we have the technology. But why do it? Because you do 5 with the 3 in the middle being the 3 columns, so it's a hat. Yes, I know it sounds silly and you're stupid. And you're like, so you're making a hat out of the playbook that's like so gimmicky. But think about it this way: the main reason I actually don't like this guy over everything is how unimaginative this playbook is. But imagine if you gave him a playbook that looked like a freaking hat. It's important to his theme. You give him a lot of utility within that. You give him knockdowns. The big burly guy with the giant wrench has knockdown. Like, makes sense to me. Give him some other like fun, like, you know, pushes and that kind of stuff. Maybe even give him a push dodge. Like, make it fun and thematic, and like give him a nice utility playbook. Doesn't have to be the most damage in the world, but give him a nice utility playbook that, you know, he can have the inspiring hat going. Maybe get some attack bonuses, wrap on it. Like, yay. Like, I think that would be awesome. Like, I think that would make him at least fun enough to play and hit the thematic, because the only thematic about him is the hat. So just go with it. Like everything else you made about him, besides like Rising Air Inspiring Hat, which is okay and not unique enough, is bad. But if you give him that 3-row playbook with 5 columns, like, yeah, like that's unique. That's actually something cool. Give me a lot of utility in that. Now players are like, I'm actually maybe want to play Harry the Hat. I would probably play Harry the Hat. It'd be at least fun. But right now, I can't even think of a fun reason to play the guy unless I wanted to just like make a statement and win a tournament with him as part of like my own personal challenge or like bounty that got put out or something. And that's just kind of where he's at, which I think is probably the only model where I'm like, this model needs a change. So all I have to say is hashtag 3-row playbook, guys. Hashtag 3-row playbook. Let's make it happen for Harry the Hat. Steam Forge, if you're listening, like free, like all rights to you guys to take that idea and run with it, because I would like to see it. But I'd like to know what you guys think. What do you think about my evaluation of the models? What tweaks would you like to see? What kind of other topics would you like me to cover? As well as, you know, I'm going to start working on some, you know, some battle report content that's has a lot of good graphics and has more of a commentary behind it. So it's more commentated games. Do some more live local tournament type stuff. I'm going to start doing some shoutcasting for Guild Ball, as well as a lot of new player guides that are really quick that I can point new players in my community as I'm helping level up the LA area, which is just starting to grow. And give them more content that I can point them to, be like, hey, boom, this is the good stuff. I think there's a lot of good articles out there, but I find like really quick videos would be a good way to get people up to speed and maybe smooth out the curve that I went through. But overall, again, if you like this, subscribe to my channel. We'll be making a lot more Guild Ball content as well as some other gaming content, but really focusing on some Guild Ball stuff going forward. And if you didn't like my stuff, let me know. I'm always want to improve, and I would enjoy hearing your guys' feedback. And with that, I think that's going to wrap up this video, and I'll see you next video. Have a good one, guys.